There comes a quiet moment in your life when the chaos no longer controls you, when the noise of external validation fades, when the desperate need to be chosen disappears. That is when you realize you are finally not in a relationship, not in a room full of approval, not inside someone else's expectations. You are finally in alignment with yourself. The first sign is this: you no longer chase what runs from you. There was a time when you believed effort meant pursuit, when love meant proving, when worth meant convincing. But now something inside you has shifted. You understand that what is meant for you does not require exhaustion. You attract by becoming, not by begging. The second sign is emotional regulation. You still feel deeply, but you are no longer ruled by your feelings. Triggers that once controlled your reactions now invite reflection. Silence no longer terrifies you. Distance no longer destabilizes you. You respond with awareness instead of reacting with wounds. The third sign is comfort in solitude. Loneliness used to echo loudly in your chest. Now solitude feels sacred. You enjoy your own company. You no longer seek distractions to avoid yourself. Being alone is no longer abandonment. It is restoration. The fourth sign is clarity of standards. You have stopped negotiating your boundaries. You no longer shrink to fit into spaces that dishonor you. You no longer romanticize red flags. When something feels misaligned, you trust yourself enough to walk away. The fifth sign is detachment from outcomes. You do the work, you show up fully, but you release the need to control the result. Whether someone stays or leaves no longer defines your identity. You understand that rejection is often redirection. The sixth sign is inner stability. Compliments do not inflate you. Criticism does not destroy you. You are centered. You are grounded. You know who you are, and that knowledge is no longer negotiable. And the seventh sign, perhaps the most powerful, is peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but a quiet, resilient peace that remains even when life challenges you. You trust yourself. You trust your path. You trust your timing. When you reach this stage, you stop asking, am I enough? You start asking, is this aligned with me? And that is how you know you are finally in, not inside someone else as validation, but inside your own power. There was a time when your energy moved outward in constant pursuit. You believed that if you tried harder, loved louder, proved more, and sacrificed deeper, you would finally be chosen. Chasing felt like effort, and effort felt noble. You thought persistence was strength. But in reality, chasing often came from fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being forgotten, fear of losing control. It was not desire guiding you, it was anxiety. And anxiety always runs. When you begin to evolve, something subtle but powerful shifts within you. You no longer feel the impulse to convince anyone of your worth. You no longer over-explain your intentions or overextend your availability. The urgency dissolves. You start to understand that what requires force is rarely aligned. Instead of running after people, opportunities, or validation, you turn inward. You begin refining yourself rather than pursuing others. Attraction is not passive. It is not laziness or indifference. It is alignment. When you stop chasing, you redirect your energy toward growth. You invest in your skills, your health, your discipline, your character. You become more self-aware. You confront your insecurities instead of masking them with performance. And as you strengthen internally, your external reality begins to reorganize. Chasing operates from scarcity. Attraction operates from abundance. When you chase, you communicate, even unconsciously, that you are afraid there is not enough love, success, or opportunity available to you. When you attract, you embody the belief that what belongs to you will recognize you. This does not mean you sit idle. You still take action. You still show interest. But your actions are grounded, not desperate. You move with intention rather than urgency. You also stop romanticizing inconsistency. If someone pulls away, you let them. If an opportunity fades, you allow space for something better to enter. You no longer interpret distance as a challenge to overcome. You see it as information. Attraction requires discernment. It demands that you observe who meets your energy and who drains it. Instead of chasing those who hesitate, you invest in those who reciprocate. The most profound change happens in your nervous system. There is calm where there used to be tension. You do not check your phone obsessively. You do not analyze every word or silence. You are present in your own life. Your focus shifts from, how do I keep this, Does this align with who I am becoming? That question alone changes everything. Ironically, the moment you release the need to be chosen is often the moment you become magnetic. Confidence rooted in self-sufficiency is powerful. People are drawn to stability. They feel safe around someone who does not cling or compete for attention. Your presence becomes steady, grounded, and authentic. You are no longer performing for approval, you are expressing your truth. Stopping the chase is not about losing desire. It is about losing desperation. You still want connection, you still pursue goals. But you refuse to abandon yourself in the process. You understand that attraction begins with self-respect. And when you stand firmly in your value, you no longer run toward what moves away. You remain centered, and what is meant for you begins to move toward you instead. There was a time when your emotions controlled the direction of your life. A single message could elevate your mood, and a delayed reply could ruin your entire day. A small disagreement felt like rejection. Silence felt like abandonment. Criticism felt like confirmation that you were not enough. You were not responding to the present moment. You were reacting from old wounds. The past was speaking through you, disguising itself as the present. When you begin to grow, you start noticing the space between stimulus and response. That space is power. Instead of immediately reacting, you pause. You observe what you are feeling without letting it dictate your behavior. You realize that intensity does not always equal truth. Sometimes it is simply memory resurfacing. Emotional regulation does not mean suppressing feelings. It does not mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming aware. You allow yourself to feel anger without becoming destructive. You experience sadness without collapsing into hopelessness. You acknowledge jealousy without turning it into accusation. You stop projecting your internal fears onto external situations. When someone pulls away, you no longer panic. You examine the fear underneath the reaction. Is it truly about this person, or is it about an old story of being left behind? When someone challenges you, you resist the urge to defend yourself instantly. You ask whether your ego is threatened or whether there is something valuable to learn. This self-inquiry changes everything. It shifts you from survival mode into consciousness. Reacting from wounds is automatic. It is fast, impulsive, and often disproportionate. Regulation is intentional. It slows you down. It requires maturity. Instead of sending the emotional text, you breathe. Instead of raising your voice, you listen. Instead of assuming betrayal, you seek clarity. The more you practice this, the more stable you become. You also begin to recognize your triggers as teachers rather than enemies. Every strong reaction points to something unresolved. Instead of blaming others, you feel a certain way. You take responsibility for understanding why it affects you so deeply. This responsibility is not self-blame. It is self-empowerment. You realize that healing is an internal process, not something someone else can complete for you. Over time, your nervous system softens. Situations that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. You are no longer addicted to emotional highs and lows. Drama loses its appeal. Chaos feels exhausting rather than exciting. You value peace more than proving a point. Regulation also transforms your relationships. People feel safer around you because you are predictable in your stability. They do not have to walk on eggshells. You communicate rather than explode. You express needs without attacking. You apologize when necessary because your identity is not threatened by accountability. Most importantly, you begin to trust yourself. You know that even if life becomes difficult, you will not lose control. You can handle discomfort without self-sabotage. You can experience conflict without abandoning yourself. Your emotions become signals, not dictators. When you stop reacting from wounds, you stop reliving the past. You start responding from awareness. And that is when emotional strength becomes one of your greatest forms of power. There was a time when silence felt heavy, when an empty room echoed with thoughts you tried to avoid. Solitude felt like evidence that something was missing, that you were somehow behind, unchosen, disconnected. You filled your schedule to escape it. You reached for distractions, conversations, noise, anything to avoid being alone with yourself. Loneliness was not just the absence of people, it was the fear of facing your own mind. As you begin to mature emotionally, your relationship with solitude changes. The same quiet that once felt suffocating starts to feel spacious. Instead of interpreting aloneness as rejection, you begin to see it as independence. You realize that needing constant company was often a way to avoid unresolved emotions. When the distractions fade, what remains is you, and at first that can be uncomfortable. But growth lives in that discomfort. When you sit with yourself long enough, you start understanding your patterns. You notice your triggers. You observe your desires without judgment. Solitude becomes a mirror rather than a punishment. In that mirror, you see both your strengths and your insecurities clearly. Instead of running from them, you begin working with them. Strength in solitude means you no longer rely on external validation to feel secure. You do not need constant reassurance to confirm your worth. Your self-concept becomes internally anchored. You can enjoy connection without depending on it for identity. Being alone stops meaning I am unwanted and starts meaning I am self-sufficient. You also become more selective with your energy. When you are comfortable alone, you no longer tolerate company that drains you just to avoid emptiness. You would rather protect your peace than entertain chaos. This changes your standards naturally. You begin choosing relationships that add value rather than simply fill time. Solitude strengthens your discipline as well. Without an audience, you still work on yourself. You still improve your habits. You still pursue your goals. There is no performance attached to your growth. It becomes personal, private, authentic. You are no longer evolving to impress others. You are evolving because you respect yourself. In solitude, creativity expands. Reflection deepens. You think more clearly without the noise of other opinions shaping your direction. Decisions become aligned rather than reactive. You discover what you genuinely enjoy, what truly matters to you, and what you have been pretending to want just to fit in. The fear of missing out begins to dissolve. You no longer measure your life against curated images or social expectations. Your timeline becomes your own. You stop rushing milestones simply because others have reached them. There is calm in moving at your natural pace. Most importantly, solitude teaches emotional resilience. If you can sit with yourself during uncertainty, heartbreak, or transition without collapsing into desperation, you gain a powerful sense of stability. You learn that your presence is enough, that your mind is not your enemy, that your company has value. When solitude becomes strength, you stop seeking to be completed. You recognize that you are already whole. And from that wholeness, any connection you choose becomes a complement, not a rescue. There was a period in your life when you confused flexibility with self-betrayal. You told yourself you were being understanding, patient, compassionate. You tolerated behaviors that unsettled you. You accepted half-effort disguised as potential. You lowered your expectations to avoid conflict, to avoid being labeled difficult, to avoid losing people. Every compromise felt small in the moment, but over time, those small compromises became a pattern of abandoning yourself. As you grow, something inside you solidifies. You begin to understand that standards are not arrogance, they are clarity. Boundaries are not walls to push people away. They are guidelines for how you deserve to be treated. When your standards become non-negotiable, it does not mean you become rigid or unforgiving. It means you stop negotiating with disrespect. You no longer over-explain why honesty matters to you. You no longer justify why consistency is important. You no longer argue with someone about why basic respect should be present. If your needs are minimized or mocked, you do not shrink to maintain harmony. You observe, you assess, and if necessary, you distance yourself. There is a quiet confidence in this shift. You stop trying to convince others to meet you at your level. You simply decide that if they cannot, they do not gain access to your energy. This is not about punishment. It is about protection. You understand that every time you tolerate what violates you, you teach others how to treat you. Boundaries also become internal. You hold yourself accountable. You no longer allow your own loneliness to override your standards. You do not text the person who repeatedly disrespects you just because you feel temporarily vulnerable. You do not revisit environments that drain your peace just because they are familiar. You choose long-term stability over short-term comfort. When your standards are non-negotiable, guilt begins to fade. You stop feeling responsible for other people as reactions to your limits. If someone is upset because you said no, you allow them to manage their emotions. You realize that being accessible at all times is not kindness. It is self-neglect. Protecting your time, energy, and emotional well-being becomes a priority rather than an afterthought. This transformation often feels lonely at first. Fewer people have access to you. certain dynamics fall apart. Some connections dissolve because they were built on your over-accommodation. But what remains or what enters afterward is healthier. You attract individuals who respect clarity instead of exploiting flexibility. You also begin to trust your intuition more deeply. If something feels misaligned, you do not ignore it. You do not silence your inner voice for the sake of politeness. You acknowledge discomfort early rather than waiting for resentment to build. Your self-respect becomes stronger than your fear of losing someone. Non-negotiable standards are not about perfection. They are about alignment. They reflect the level of growth you have reached. When you know your worth, you stop bargaining with it. You understand that love, opportunity, and connection should complement your life, not compromise your dignity. And once you experience the stability that comes from honoring your boundaries, you realize you will never return to negotiating your value again for a long time. You believe control was security. If you could predict the outcome, guarantee the result, or secure someone as commitment, you would finally feel safe. You attached your peace to specific endings. You told yourself that happiness depended on this job working out, this relationship lasting, this opportunity unfolding exactly as planned. When things shifted unexpectedly, it felt personal. It felt like failure. It felt like proof that you were not enough. Detachment changes that narrative. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping so tightly. You still set goals. You still invest emotionally. You still show up with effort and sincerity. But you release the illusion that you can control everything beyond your contribution. You focus on your input, not the outcome. When you detach, rejection loses its sting. It may disappoint you, but it does not define you. If someone chooses differently, you allow them. If a door closes, you resist the urge to force it open. You begin to see closed doors not as punishments, but as protection. Not every opportunity is aligned with who you are becoming. Not every connection is meant to travel the full journey with you. Trust in redirection requires humility. It asks you to admit that your current perspective is limited. What feels like loss today may reveal itself as guidance tomorrow. You start recognizing patterns in your past. Moments when something you desperately wanted fell apart, only to make space for something healthier. That memory strengthens your faith in the unknown. This mindset also stabilizes your emotions. Instead of riding extreme highs when things go your way and collapsing when they do not, you remain centered. You understand that outcomes are temporary. Success can shift. Circumstances can change. But your identity remains intact. You are no longer tying your worth to external validation. Detachment frees you from desperation. When you are no longer afraid of losing something, you show up more authentically. You speak honestly because you are not trying to manipulate the result. You love openly because you are not bargaining for permanence. Ironically, this authenticity often improves outcomes, but that is no longer your primary focus. You also stop chasing closure. You accept that not every story will make sense immediately. Some endings will feel abrupt. Some explanations will never come. Instead of exhausting yourself searching for answers, you redirect your energy toward growth. You ask, what is this teaching me, rather than why did this happen to me? Trusting redirection strengthens your resilience. You begin to move with life instead of against it. You adapt, you recalibrate, you stay open. There is a quiet confidence in knowing that even if your plans dissolve, you will rebuild. Even if you must start over, you will not start from scratch because you carry wisdom forward. Detachment is not indifferent. It is emotional maturity. It is the understanding that you are responsible for your effort, not the universe's response. When you release the need to control every outcome, you create space for possibilities you could not have designed on your own. And in that space, redirection becomes less frightening and more empowering, though there was a time when your peace depended on conditions. You felt calm only when everyone was pleased with you, when plans unfolded exactly as expected, when there was no conflict waiting in the background. The slightest disruption could shake your stability. A change in tone, an unexpected delay, a minor disagreement, and your thoughts would spiral. Your sense of safety was external, fragile, constantly negotiated. Stable inner peace feels different. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not announce itself with excitement. It is quiet, steady, grounded. It remains even when circumstances fluctuate. You still experience disappointment, but it does not consume you. You still face uncertainty, but it does not paralyze you. There is a deep understanding that whatever happens, you will handle it. Self-trust is the foundation of this peace. It develops slowly through consistent self-honoring. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce it. Every time you walk away from what disrespects you, you strengthen it. Every time you choose long-term growth over short-term comfort, you build evidence that you can rely on yourself. Over time, that evidence becomes unshakable confidence. With self-trust, decisions become clear. You no longer crowdsource every choice, seeking endless reassurance from others. Advice can still be helpful, but it is no longer necessary for validation. You listen inward. You weigh your values. You choose with intention. Even if the decision turns out imperfectly, you do not collapse into regret because you know you acted in alignment with your awareness at the time. Stable inner peace also transforms how you interpret challenges. Instead of immediately assuming something is wrong, you approach difficulties with curiosity. You ask what adjustment is needed rather than questioning your worth. You no longer personalize every obstacle. Life becomes a series of experiences, not verdicts on your value. This stability softens your reactions. You do not rush to defend yourself at every perceived slight. You do not crumble under criticism. Compliments are appreciated, but they do not inflate your ego. Praise and blame lose their extreme influence because your identity is not built on external opinions. You know who you are beyond the moment. There is also patience in this peace. You stop rushing timelines. You trust your pace. You understand that growth is not linear and that setbacks are not permanent. Instead of panicking when progress feels slow, you remain committed. That consistency creates momentum without chaos. Perhaps the most powerful shift is the end of constant self-doubt. The voice in your head becomes supportive rather than condemning. You still hold yourself accountable, but without cruelty. You correct yourself without shame. You forgive yourself without excuses. That internal relationship becomes stable. And because of it, external instability feels less threatening. When you experience stable inner peace and self-trust, you stop searching for someone or something to anchor you. You become your own anchor. Storms may still come, but you no longer fear being swept away. You stand grounded in the quiet certainty that no matter what unfolds, you will remain steady within yourself. And when you reach this point in your life, you no longer ask whether you are chosen because you have already chosen yourself. You no longer chase, react, cling, or compromise your worth to feel secure. You stand grounded in your standards, calm in your emotions, steady in your solitude, and confident in your direction. You understand that peace is not found, it is built. Alignment is not given, it is earned. And love, success, and respect are not things you beg for. They are things that meet you when you finally meet yourself. This is how you know you are finally in, not inside someone else's approval, not inside temporary validation, but inside your power, your clarity, and your unshakable self-trust.